Hi, everyone. It is me, Canden. I'm so happy to be doing this live stream today. I have a very, very special guest that will be joining me for an incredibly important topic that we will discuss. And I know that it's been a while since I've done one of these lives, but I thought that this was a more than worthy cause. So, all you parent, if you know a parent, even if you're not a parent, if you know a parent, go ahead and just share the link with them, tell them, hey, hop on here. We're going to have some important discussion about how we kind of can teach our children about purity, about sex, the conversations that we can have with them that will be effective for their everyday lives. Okay. So, first, let me just make sure that everybody's good. It is the middle of the week, it's Thursday. Hopefully you're having a good day wherever you are in the world. If you're joining us live, make sure that you put your city in the chat. You can feel free to leave comments. Y'all know how we do this, okay? Even though we haven't done it for a while, there's a comment section, so you can always leave us comments, questions that you have about the different content that we're talking about, and make sure that you share this with at least a couple other people, all right? Over the pandemic, we've been locked inside and now we were outside. Things have gone back to normal. I know schools were shut down, but a lot of the kids are going back. Everyone's graduating, everyone's back to school, and now it's summer break. And I thought that this was a really good time to kind of talk about, how we can talk to our kids about sex, because a lot of what our sexual behavior and our sexual understanding it happens from when we're children, right? So it's a super, super important thing. And I've gotten a lot of questions in my career as a purity coach, as a holistic purity coach, about how can I talk to my kids about this? Like, what can I say to them? What can I tell them? So I am super excited because I have a special guest and she is about to give us the gems, okay? Because I don't have kids, so I'm going to speak to you from the perspective of a single person. She has kids, okay? So she has kids. Not only that, but she is incredibly like gifted and educated in this area. So she's going to give us all the tea on how to really do this, okay? I'm taking notes and preparing, and I suggest that you do the same. So my special guest, Johnetta Howard, is a graduate intern therapist, and she's set to graduate from Liberty University with a degree in marriage and family therapy. Hello, because we need more of those out here, okay? You know we do. She's a certified SYMBIS. Now I'm gonna say SYMBIS, but it might be an acronym. SYMBIS, premarital facilitator. That just means she fancy, y'all, okay? And has a passion for healthy families and relationships. Janetta is married to Marcus, and they have 4 beautiful children. Count them up: 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Party of 6 in the house, which they homeschool. In addition to being an author, Janetta has led parent workshops and spoken at conferences, schools, and churches on the topics of sex and purity. And I met Janetta through Spirit of Faith and through my awesome mentor, Dr. Lindsay. And I've been familiar with Janetta for years, and just the sweetest, humblest person in the world. I did not know that she had an entire book on how to teach your kids about purity. And as soon as I found out, I was like, wait, we need to talk about this. We need to have some conversation and see what's really going on here. Okay. So I'm so excited to have her with me today. Super duper blessed. And I want to welcome her to Live with Canden. So welcome, Janetta. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hey, Canden.
Yes, ma'am. After several weeks of some low-key harassment, Janetta has agreed. I'm just kidding. She was super happy to do it, but I was like, we had to get our schedules together. So I'm so glad that you're able to be here with us, sis. And I know that you have a busy schedule, so it's super important that we really take notes to, what you're going to tell us, because this is a super important subject. And I have, you know what, Janetta, I have people that I've had conversations with that have literally said, I don't know if I want to have children because the world is like nuts. And like, how do I really like deal with them when I can barely deal with myself? So I'm so happy that you're here to help us on this evening.
Happy to be here.
Yes. So glad. So how did you kind of come to how did you come to write this book? Like, was it like just an epiphany you had one day, or what inspired you to kind of do it?
What inspired me is really my life as a child, being exposed to pornography at an early age and the struggles that came from that.
Mm.
Um, and once I became a mother, I didn't want my children to go through the same thing I went through. And, um, at the time I was exposed to pornography, it was in a magazine at that time, but now it's everywhere.
Yes.
It's everywhere. And so I just wanted to get ahead of things. And um, I wanted to prepare my children in a way that I wasn't prepared as a child.
Mm.
I wanted to get in there early and be one of the first to really expose them to sex, according to God's purpose for sex. I wanted that to be their first exposure before the world exposed them to everything else.
That's so good. Yeah, a lot of us have really intricate histories with, being exposed to sex at early ages, or just not really having a proper understanding when we did come of age. Some of us, even who, were raised in spiritual backgrounds and settings, we didn't really know a lot until we got the negative stuff. So it is super duper important that we're able to kind of, get to our kids and really educate them, before they just experience whatever the world is saying about it, because there's so many skewed views. So,
Absolutely.
speaking of that, like it's an interesting. I mean, you mentioned porn being kind of everywhere. It's an interesting kind of climate to even raise your kids in, because I've noticed, even with my nephew and a few other kids that I've had in my life, that they're a little bit more open to everything. They have different types of friends, and then they're seeing so much, even from movies that like are like supposed to be children's movies. They're like being sexualized now. So do you feel like today it's realistic for parents to really help their kids and really to get through to them when it comes to having a positive view of purity over sex?
Absolutely. I mean, even with all of the things that are coming at our children in the media, at school, everywhere with their friends, as parents, we're still the number one sex educators for our children. And the messages that they get from us are the loudest messages, the ones that stick with them the longest. And they're watching us and they're trying to, even if we don't say anything, we're saying a lot through how we're living before them, what they see at home. It doesn't matter really. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but despite all of the chaos that's going on outside of the home, the home really does have the most influence still. It
Yeah, I love that so much. Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, it's good that we kind of shine a positive light on this, because kids sometimes they seem like they're not listening, but they are.
They are.
They seem like they're not they always are looking at what you're doing. They're always they're very, very sensitive to the things that's going around them and going on around them, and then their environment. So I think it's really, really good that you're saying, like, yeah, the parents are the loudest. I love that. Love how you say that. Okay, look. All right, so in this book, which I love, you guys have got to get this book. It's called The ABCs of Purity: How to Talk to Your Kids About Sex. It's on Amazon. Such a good, and it's an easy read. It's like I was in there like at night. I don't even wear glasses. I was putting up my imaginary glasses, like, okay, let me, I was tuned in. Okay. So you guys have to get the book. So in your book, you talk about having conversations with your kids, about sex at an early age. So, I mean, how do you how do you even bring that up? Like when let's say your kid is like 3 or 4, what are you teaching them? You give kind of some developmental clues in your book, but how are you kind of like bringing that in for them?
I mean, you really don't always have to bring it up per se, because they're going to bring it up.
Mm.
It's when they're toddlers, they see their body, they're looking down, they say, oh, why do I have a penis or a vagina? Like, what? That's the beginning of talking about sexuality, because, you know, what we don't realize, parents, is sometimes we forget, like, we are all sexual beings. Like, children are sexual beings too. Like, we have, you know, we're all sexual beings. And so our sexuality is with us from day one. Like, and we're trying, as children, they're trying to figure themselves out, and they're looking to you for answers. So they might ask you, why do they have a particular body part? Why is their body part different than their siblings if they have a different gendered sibling? And they might ask you about your body parts, like, why do women have these, or why do men have? So they're curious. And so a lot of times they will bring it up in some way, shape, or form, just trying to figure out who they are, you know, their identity, and why they are the way that they are. And so when they do give those little inklings and ask those little questions, sometimes children are shamed, like, why are you talking about your private area? Why, you know, and that's okay. That sends a message to them that I'm not going to talk to you about this again. You know, you're telling me that I can't come to you with this. So in the book, I just share the importance of when they start asking questions. If they ask questions before you introduce things to them and sit them down, which is likely that they will ask you first. Don't shame them away or make them feel like, you know, is something wrong, because like I said, God gave us these body parts. Like, he created us all as sexual beings. So it's nothing to be ashamed about.
I love that. I love that so much. And I've seen kids do it like, mommy, you got, and you'd be
Yeah.
like, I use these to feed you guys.
Yeah.
Use them as teachable moments. And I like that because it doesn't feel forced. Like you're trying to have like the talk, right? You're just using everyday life experiences and you're making them feel normalized. And I love that because I do that a lot in my work as well. There's quite some drastic situations and scenarios that I encounter where really a lot of people have struggled with those particular things, or a lot of people experience those urges or whatever, and it's a very natural thing. But
It is.
I will tell you, I'm not a parent, Janetta. I have a nephew though, and I was like, Lord, help me, because whenever it comes to something sexual in your children, because I love him so much like a child, even though he's not my child. It breaks. It's like you can get very overprotective of your child, and it can be a little scary for the child because it's hard for you to make it normal. So I like these teachable moments where you have to like practice a little bit. Like, it's okay. They come home, they say so and so did so and so. Oh, so let me talk to you about, you know, that happens, and you know, but in your head you be panicking like, Lord, let me not, you know, strike whoever is touching my baby or whatever, telling my baby about whatever. So anyway, I like that. I like those teachable moments. Okay, so but what would you say, Janetta, to someone who maybe has kids that are a little bit older? Because thank God, you know, you've been kind of teaching your children from a young age. You're giving them what you didn't have. But how would you kind of, what would you recommend for a person who maybe their child is like maybe 7, 8 years old, and they feel like it's a little bit past those developmental, because I think children kind of have a lot of development between like 4 and 6. So it's a little bit past those ages. Like, how would you recommend that they kind of introduce it if the child just doesn't really seem interested? If they're just kind of like shut down, like, Mom, I don't want to talk about XYZ.
Yeah, it can be awkward, you know, especially if you haven't established those open lines of communication, and you have never discussed it in your home before. And if you haven't discussed it in your home before, I would say the first thing you should do is ask them questions. You know, what do you know about sex? Or what do you know? Use any teachable moment you can, or ask them about their friends at school. What are they talking about, or what are they doing? Because, you know, the majority of the time they've been exposed to something by the time they're 7 or 8. You know, they literally go to school.
Mm.
And, you know, some 7 and 8-year-olds have cell phones. You know, they carry cell phones, and if your child has a cell phone, then they have access to pornography. You know, that's just
Wow.
and there's a lot of, you know, the pornography industry they're not really focused on adults. they're focused on children, right? Because the younger they get them hooked, the longer they'll be, a customer for them.
Mm.
So, that there are children, that go to school, they have a cell phone or a tablet that they're supposed to be using for educational purposes, right? And they'll find something on there and they will share. Children like to share, they'll show their classmate, So just ask them questions. Have you ever seen, this before? Have you, experienced this? Has anyone asked to kiss you or touch you? Like, just start asking questions. And they may be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's better that you get those lines of communication open as soon as possible, and make it a comfortable, judgment-free zone for them to come to you. That's really important, because if they're not going to talk to you, they will talk to somebody else. It's a guarantee that they're
Mhm.
gonna talk to someone else.
I love that. I love asking questions. Thank the Lord for asking questions. That's the best way to create a safe, vulnerable environment. And we do that sometimes even with adults. We ask questions. We don't make assumptions or just come to them necessarily with, well, if we're communicating healthily, or just come to them with something. A lot of times we want to dig a little bit deeper, get what their experience is. And I like that because I feel like it's a busy world. Parents are, we live in a little bit of a different society, so a lot of us, thank God, are working from home.
Yeah.
But parents are still busy. They're still busy trying to cook, trying to clean, trying to do their own self-care, trying to be together in marriage. And so I like that it creates a sense of just pausing a little bit and creating a sense of intimacy where you're not doing something for your kid, or maybe you're talking to them as you do it, but it's a moment where you can pause and say, like, what is your experience like? Is there anything that you want to share, that you want to talk about in regards to XYZ? I love that so much. The people are loving it. Oh, Victor's so nice. He said, you're dope. He's like, she's dope. Love it. She is, Victor. You got good taste. She is dope. She's a dope facilitator. She's amazing, very knowledgeable about this. So we're listening. Our ears are tuned in. Christina says if they're old enough to ask, they're old enough to know. So kids don't really hold that. Yeah, very, very true. All right, cool. So I like that. Just really honing in on what it is that they're experiencing before you just go talking about whatever it is. Do you feel, Janetta, that it's equally important for both parents to be a part of this discussion with the kids? Like, do you feel like it's going to be a different type of impact if it's just a single parent versus if it's a two-home parent? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be different. The original design for the family, obviously, God designed it to be a husband and a wife, mom and dad in the home, so that children have both models, to pull from and to learn from and to get their identity from. But of course, we don't live in a perfect world, right? So there are a lot of single parent homes. There are a lot of cohabitating homes. There's even same-sex homes. There's all types of homes out there. And no matter what type of home you're in, you just really the word of God, it still applies the same if you're a single parent. And the wisdom of God is still just as powerful that will teach you how to navigate. And as a single parent, I grew up in a single parent home after my parents split. So my heart is really with single parents because I'm a product of a single parent home. And, I know that, the stressors are greater. You're working harder to provide and it's just So in that instance, you want to make sure that there are good people around your children, whether it's an uncle, whether it's a grandfather, whether it's, a youth pastor, somebody else that that has the ear of God, or the heart of God for your child, that can speak into your child and build your child up, and even that your child can come to a safe person that they can come to and to if they can't always talk to you because you're busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think having mentors and other people in your child's life is really imperative if you're a single parent.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And shout out to all the single parents out there. Listen, we want you to know, get this book so you can steer your child's understanding of themselves. There's some really, really good things that I love that you say in there. And I remember that there was, I was at church, and there was this lady, very, very sweet woman. And I think I did a talk just about something in the Bible for like a women's chat and chew. And the lady, she had asked me shortly after she heard me do the chat, she said, "Hey, I'm gonna just, is it okay if I have my daughters call you?" She had 3 daughters and they were all different ages. And she was like, "Is it okay if I just give them your number and you can chat with them?" And I was like, "Sure." And that was really meaningful to me because I don't think anyone had ever asked me as a single woman to, like, and just walking in abstinence and this type of thing, to be like connected to their children that were perfectly straight, that were strangers to me, but we knew each other from church. And that was very meaningful to me. And I was more than happy to just call, check in on them, see if they had any questions. They were like range from like teenage to college, or like not teenage, like 12 to college. And so I love that idea of just getting some people around that have values based on faith and scripture and integrity, right? Who can kind of co-sign, what it is that is life experience that you learn over time that maybe they don't have that wisdom yet. So that's really, really good. So single parents, listen, I know, I can imagine. So
Yeah, that's really key. And you and I share like an amazing mentor. And, back on the single parent topic, that's why I put mentorship as letter M in the book, because that is so important. And, parents have different testimonies and different walks and different experiences. And you might not have waited until marriage to have sex, or you might be shacking up right now, or cohabitating is the proper word for it. You might be cohabitating right now, and you know that your child is looking at you, but you also know that you want them to have biblical values. And so if you don't have that testimony, find somebody that does, or pray for someone that does, because if you're trying to tell your child, wait to have sex, but they don't see any example of that around, you can't provide it for them, find somebody that does. It takes humility, because we should all want to do better than we did. We should all want them not to have to go through the same type of struggles that we did. So one of the keys for me was just, getting connected with Dr. Lindsay, and just seeing somebody that was living a life of purity. Like, she wasn't having sex like every other person out there, single woman or single man out there. She was not having sex until marriage. And that was just, to see that made me recognize that I could actually be that. And that's what our children need. They need to see the examples that we want them to become. Like, they got to see it, right?
Yes, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. They absolutely do. Shout out to Dr. Lindsay. We love you. Okay, so Christina has a question. The question is, how do you navigate computer time, radio time, and TV time while you're in the home with your children?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I try to limit their time. But when they are watching it, I try to make sure that I know what they're watching. Like, I can tell you what shows they like. I have sat down and watched a lot of their shows with them. And if you do that, you really will be surprised at exactly what's in the shows, because there are really not a lot of kids shows out there. There's a lot of sneaky stuff in the kids shows, and a lot of things, unless you're not completely paying attention, you could easily miss some of this stuff. And your child will sing a song, or they'll say something, and you'll be like, huh, where'd you get that from? They're watching a kiddie show. We just went to the movies, recently, to see one of the blockbusters, for a lot of kids went to see it, and there's references in there to different lifestyles and things. And it's very subtle. It'll be very subtle. And if you're not paying attention, all these subtle things will build up.
Yeah.
And your children will begin to develop their own thinking apart from the values that you want to teach them. So just really know what they're watching. You can't just sit them down with the tablet and say, all right, go have fun. You need to know what I've had to remove so many things that were built into my child's tablet, like certain music and stuff. Like, I'm like, okay, we're not going to listen to this. Like, this stuff is programmed into these mechanisms, and you really got to be aware of what your child is ingesting every day.
That's good. Yeah, it's important. It's important. And I know that some parents are probably like, look, it's everywhere. I don't have time to really like, it's like you playing a game of like tennis, like pop, pop, pop. You're trying to get, you're trying to remove so here's the thing. And I love the balanced view that you provide with your book, because you do talk about things like, you know, gender, identity. You really kind of, it's actually incredible with such conciseness. You hit so many issues, right? So I love it. And you actually hit on that. And I like the way that you kind of phrase it, because you're saying that it's an attack on gender. And I feel like a lot of parents relate to that. They're like, I don't know what to do. Like, my values are my values, but I know that you're going to experience a lot of different things. And like I said, kids are very liberal with their thinking. I think they're just supportive. I think that they are empathetic. They're more empathetic than ever. And I think they're more supportive. And I think that they're experiencing and exposed to more than ever, right? So they have a different view. So how would you recommend a parent giving their kids a balanced view of like, okay, respecting the decisions of others, but also just putting to them to letting them know that like you can keep your own standard, even if no one else does it, right? How do you just communicate that to them?
Yeah, I think we need to really understand that there's a difference between being liberal and being loving. And we can teach our children to be loving, and that covers everything. It's like, we don't discriminate against anybody. We love everybody. We don't hate anyone, but at the same time, we know who we are, and we have our own values and standards. When you get into the liberal, you know, it's almost like anything and everything is okay type of thing. And that's kind of, you know, that's not really what the Word of God teaches us. Anything and everything is not okay. But when you see anything and everything, you have to know what's right for you. And that's being, knowing who you are, you know, knowing who we are and what we do and why we're here. But yeah, I think in today's society, they're taught to be liberal, because there's so many things that we have to accept nowadays. But in accepting everything, a lot of times we reject Jesus. And that's the problem. If we're being so accepting, we got to make sure that we are accepting Jesus first as our standard. And then everything else comes out under that. You know, he's got to be accepted first.
Love it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And it reminds me to just, even in my own life, make sure I'm praying for wisdom, right? Make sure that I'm praying for insight, and that I have like a really good relationship with God myself. And you also touch that in the book, because I feel like some parents may feel like because they didn't experience the life of purity and they didn't do everything right, that they are, even though they want better for their children, they don't necessarily know how to be an example of that. So I love the fact of keeping mentors around them and people who they can see, but also like that in your book, you talk about just trying your best to live a life that is an example to them, through just closeness with God, through removing the own perversity and perversion out of your life, right? Because I can't tell my when my nephew comes to visit, I love him so much. That's why I talk about him so much. When he comes to visit me, if I'm watching God knows what while he's here, I need to protect. Even though I'm an adult, there are areas of my spirit too that are being disturbed by the things that I'm seeing, and so I'm even watchful over my own spirit, right? Because I don't want for me to be saying do this, but I feel like once you get a certain age, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Like it does. It continues to matter into your adulthood. So I really appreciate that, because I feel like it's never too late to set a standard for how you want to live and how you want and what you want your children to experience, right?
Absolutely. And I think along what chiming into what you just said, Canden, you could say, you could have the attitude, I'm grown. Go play with your toys. I'm watching my show or whatever. I'm grown. Auntie is grown. And, with as Christians, we are grown, but we are still children of God, and we still have the same standards of, the same thing that we want our children to uphold. Like we need to be upholding, like, but they're getting so many mixed messages, like I'm over here holding my drink, right? Don't drink because I'm grown, or I'm smoking, don't smoke. It's not good for you, or whatever it is, it could be a lot of different things, but it's like we want them to go one way, but they see us. And like I said, parents are the biggest influence, and you are setting the standard for how they view everything. And if you keep on saying I'm grown, they're not gonna wait until they're grown to do some of this stuff, because you're saying you're grown, but at the same time you're their example. So you're sending a message to them. It's okay because mom and dad do it. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
They taught me ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. They taught me everything. So if they're doing it, like, I think I can handle it too. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm not waiting until I'm grown. Like, I'm gonna do it now, and they're gonna do it. So, like, our example, like, is so important. It really is.
Yeah, it's super important. Okay, so you have some beautiful, beautiful children. I have had the pleasure of meeting them. They're so adorable and so smart. Oh my gosh. So what are some challenges that you've run into with kind of, teaching them about purity? Have you had any challenges with them yet? Christina's curious about that too. She's like, have you had any hard questions that your children have asked you? So can you think of any time, or is it just like, we take this in increments and we're doing good? Luckily, I ain't ran into that yet.
Yeah, my babies are still young. But unfortunately, we've had to have some conversations. We have had to have some serious conversations, because I told you, in the times that we're living in, it's going to find them. Like, they might not be looking for anything. It's going to find them. So recently, my son, who's 10, he walked into, public library in the children's section, and he was looking at books like he always does. He picks out his own books, and he pulled out a book, opened it up, and it was nude adults and children bathing together in a bathhouse.
What?
And yes, this recently happened this year. And he put the book back, and we left the library, and he told me, I just saw, naked people in a book. I was like, what section were you in? Like, I thought, I just didn't I was like, oh, it must be somebody must have put something in the children's section by mistake. We're gonna go back tomorrow, and I'm gonna check things out and see. But and he was correct. I went right in the children's section. It was on display, like at one of the first shelves. And it was a book about a bathhouse, and adults and children were bathing together in the nude. And so he said, I felt dirty when I looked at those pictures. And he said, why was that book in the children's section? Am I in trouble? And I said, you're not in trouble. And I talked to the librarian, and I said, why is this just out, like up front in the children's section? Couldn't this be put, somewhere else? Or why is this book even in here? She said, oh, we have a lot of different views, and we have to have materials that are for everybody. And I said, oh, okay. So needless to say, I was furious. I was like, okay, I'm like, me, God, really? Like, I talk about purity all the time. So it doesn't really matter who you are. Like I said, it's going to find them. And I was really confident in the fact that my son was able to come to me and share with me, that he felt something wrong with looking at those images. That I'm happy with. I'm happy that he didn't just sit there and look at it and be like, let me, because he could have and never said a word to me, but he brought it to me. And, my husband talked to him about it and we prayed about it. And for a little while, the place where he loved, which was the library, he loves books, he loves to read. He didn't want to go there.
Oh,
To go there, so I had to let him know, you know what, we're going to encounter some things that, are a little difficult and hard, but I don't want you to feel like you can't go to the library. Don't let this incident steal your joy of reading and books and learning and all of that. It shouldn't have been in there. I had to let him know, even though the librarian said it was perfectly okay. The book was 5-star rated in the school system, et cetera, et cetera. It's not okay for children to see that.
right.
Exactly.
No, that's a girl. That's tough. Here's the thing. I loved reading when I was a child. Loved it. And similarly to your really beautiful, astute son, I had a similar experience. I didn't see a totally nude person. I've heard of kids going to movies and seeing that for the first time, like a nude woman, a nude man. But my experience was I didn't know that the book that I was getting, because my parents, I was book crazy. I had the light on in the middle of the night with the tent. I read all the time. I didn't know that a particular book that I picked up at a library, because I just did it. My parents weren't like watching me. They knew I loved books. I had my own money. I was probably 12 at this time, 13. And I didn't know it was adult content. I just thought, I was like, oh, that storyline sounds interesting. And I get home and I'm reading the book like, what in the world? So it's so true that those things absolutely do find you no matter what, because they're created, and they're accessible to everyone.
Yep.
And so I really hate that for him. I like you. I'm like, okay, don't let it ruin your reading experience. But yes, thank God for the sensitivity, because sometimes kids don't have the sensitivity by the time they see that. And then it is addictive, right? It's like a sensory thing. Like you sit in front of the TV, you call your kid's name, your kid's just like this in front of the TV watching regular stuff. So then imagine porn and content that's really very adult. It stays with them and it hooks them. And then you have porn addictions and these things that we're trying to get rid of as an adult, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes problematic. So I love that. And I like the way that you handle that. But yeah, thank God that he has a little bit of a conscious and awareness. I like to call it a sexual awareness when I'm talking to my women in my group, that he has that at such a young age. So that's lovely. Okay, so so you have 2 girls, Janetta, and then you have 2 boys.
I do.
Right? So how do you kind of, do you treat them differently a little bit? You talk about gender as far as the differences between boys and girls and how that kind of affected you, how you were treated a little bit differently as a girl and taught different things as a girl growing up than your brother, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you kind of do differently now with your children? And are there any differences that you feel like they need from a teaching standpoint, given whether they're girls or boys?
I think, the genders are different. God made it that way purposely. We're set up differently, but the same standard goes for boys and girls. I think a lot of times people will be harder on their girls. What are you wearing? You can't go out looking like that. Or, you don't say that, or you don't do this, but their boys, they'll be like encouraging them, some of the behavior, like, how many girlfriends do you got? Or, all this type of stuff. So what happens is, it's like when you see a lot of young men getting caught up in different, sexual challenges, they pushing past boundaries with women and all of this stuff. It's like, you got to wonder, like, what were they taught? Because the messages are, it's okay for you to have sex with as many as many girls and women as you possibly can. That's part of being a man. Like, if you're not doing that, then you're not a man. You're not a real man. Mm-hmm. And the message is different, and so, for me, the messages are the same. Like, as far as like purity is something that we live, no matter whether we're male or female. And, one day, hopefully you can present your wife with your body that you haven't just given to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
With my little boys, I tell them, save your kisses for your misses. Your kisses aren't for everybody. You know what I mean? So,
That's so cute.
and so I do talk to my boys about it. It is going to be different, and my husband will have, a different way of going about it with boys and girls, but the standard is still the same. The standard is definitely still the same. That's why Luke, my oldest son, he's on the book, because I wanted to make a statement that don't just put this on your little girls. Like, boys need purity as well. They need to know how to conduct themselves sexually. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
They really, really do. Our boys, there's so many offenders out there, and a lot of boys are offending, and I mean, I don't even know if they understood or were taught purity at all, or how to conduct themselves sexually. I really don't.
Yeah, a lot of them I don't think are given any guidance. And if they do get guidance, it is in the exact opposite direction, like you were saying, right? Like, or it's just seen all around them,
Yeah.
right? It's the OG on the block, right? It's the uncles they got who are not really settled down. They kind of got, but then they got all these extras, you know. So yeah, I do think that a lot of the messages that we're getting as kids are the opposite of purity. But I think for men, it's a lot more of a dire situation, as you say, because what guidance are they getting? And it can't be just like, don't get no girl pregnant. It needs to be your body matters, your soul matters, your emotional stability matters, your legacy that you're leaving. That's actually something you want to think about, that maybe you want to plan for. There are a lot of different challenging things that I'm surprised that we don't go into a lot more as far as statistically, because even getting married before the age of 25 is very detrimental to people because they're not as developed, right? We don't even let people like vote to a certain age, right? We don't allow you to do certain things because of what? Recklessness, immaturity, right? So if you don't have an understanding or a developmental mentor as far as how do I process this? What is the behavior that should be acceptable according to my faith, my values? Then it becomes a reckless situation where by the time you get to college, it's just whatever.
And it is just whatever. And as an intern therapist, I have clients now. So, you know, exactly, college. That's a whole nother animal. But I want to talk about something you said, the message that we send our boys, like, don't get no girl pregnant, don't bring no babies home. That message, what you're really saying is to him, okay, I can't bring a baby home. So if somebody does get pregnant, okay, we're going to have an abortion.
Mm,
And they don't need your permission to do that. So you have no idea how many abortions your sons have had, let alone your daughters,
wow.
because you told them don't bring no babies home. Is that like, why are you saying that? Because it would bring shame to you and your legacy? Or, I mean, that you really have to understand, like, a lot of the things we tell our children are based upon fear, that our own fears that we have for ourselves, and, our own expectations that we have on them. So we really need to watch what we're telling them.
Mhm.
In some households, that is the sex talk, especially with boys. Don't bring no babies home.
Yep. Yep. And
And
that's
that's
it. And that's
sufficient.
all they hear.
That's not sufficient.
Yeah. And then there's like a shame of getting a baby, but is there any conviction when it comes to how you're interacting with women, how you're interacting with men sexually? I can't even begin to tell you, Janetta, how many times, even as an adult, there's been inappropriate communication from some guy, and it's not. This isn't really this isn't like to say that men should be attacked or that every man is like this, because they're not. But I figured out that the reason why I was experiencing that sometimes was more so because that was the expectation that no one had a higher standard, so that it was either funny or, and we see things like this all the time. Reality TV, I watch some of it sometimes, some of the relationship stuff, and it teaches me a lot. It's like my second teacher. Like psychology is my first teacher, and then reality TV, relationship TV. I'm like, okay, let me pay attention to how these people react. And I've seen inappropriate sexual content from people who are almost strangers, and it'll be like laughed off, or it'll be like perfectly acceptable according to society. And even things like that, for me, I always am very communicative. Like, yeah, that's not how you really talk to a woman. That's really not how you talk to anybody. And just to alluding to things, or always making the content, the conversation sexual immediately in a romantic setting. There are a lot of dysfunctional things that come out of not really guarding yourself in purity.
Yeah, you're right.
A lot of dysfunctional things, and I don't think that we think to this extent when we're having these sex conversations. I don't think we're thinking like a person, a grown man should be able to facilitate romantic discussions without immediately going to sex or treating women like a sexual object, and vice versa. Women shouldn't do that to men either, right? But it's so normalized in our society, and this is why I feel like your book is so important, and why I wanted to really get into plenty of the details with it, because I think we're kind of breezing over these topics of discussion that are much more important and valuable than we understand, because we don't have the issue yet. It's like you don't go to the doctor until something's wrong, right? Like you wait and you're fine. Oh, I'm well. I don't need a checkup. I don't need to go to the dentist and get my teeth clean. Like I'm fine. And then when you have 18 cavities, you go to the dentist, right?
Yeah.
So just guarding our children is so important, even from the standpoint of a single person, a person who's a member of the community and who's around children, of like steering them in the right direction, and that sort of thing. And even when I see kids and doing things that I'm like, that's not, I'm the auntie in the community. I don't care if they cuss me out or what. I'd be like, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, don't do that. I don't even know the kids. I'd be like, did you just, don't touch her. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's so important for us all to have a responsibility and a hand in protecting their innocence. Absolutely. Right? So is that why you do what you do? Like, what is your why for like you just being a person who wants to discuss purity more? Like, is that part of it, or what's your motivation?
I mean, yeah, my motivation is just, like I said, pornography really could have set me down a path that I don't know where I would be if I didn't get off of that, horrible path of thinking. It changes your mind. It changes like things, and it changes things within you. You know what I mean? And it causes you to look at individuals, even males and females, as just sexual objects, and I think that is the reason why a lot of, people don't know how to interact with other human beings, because they're just looking at this person as a sexual object. And you're in this kind of fog of lust and just, impurity, like, and you just, it's like a cloud over your mind. Like you're not even seeing straight. You're not talking straight. You're not living straight, because this fog is on you. And it wasn't until I came out of that fog and, thankfully I came out of it, that I was able to start to see people as human beings, yeah. And it's just, and you're right, as little girls and young women, I remember when I was like 11 or 12, a guy that I was talking to on the phone, his first conversation with me is like, oh, can you send me some nude photos of you? And I was like, huh? And this was really before like cell phones and social media and all of that stuff was, I was just like, this is our first conversation?
Not the first one.
Like, yeah, and I'm just a little, I didn't even know. I was like, I don't think we're going to talk anymore. But, this has become the norm for females, and even some males, growing up. And it's the norm. And a lot of people don't know what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So any attention that they get is welcomed, and then they find themselves in situations that they don't want to be in, and a lot of us don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to have healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Because of this garbage that we're ingesting,
Yeah. No, so true. So true. I love it. Well, I love what you're doing. You're an amazing, inspirational person. What do you want to do next? Any plans for a new book on purity, or as your children age, or are you just going to kind of focus on the entire family as you get degreed up?
That is my focus right now, finishing. I'm at the tail end, finishing my degree, just being the best therapist that I can possibly be, the best parent, the best wife that I can be. And what I'm thinking about now is just, the message of purity isn't about like perfection, doing everything right, because none of us do every single thing right in life. But it's just really understanding what God designed sex for and following that plan, and knowing how to have a healthy relationship, developing healthy relationship skills.
Yes.
In romantic relationships, family relationships, friendships, I think that is something that we really need to focus on, because a lot of people are lost in that particular area. And just helping people the best way that I can and living my life to honor God. That's my whole thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I heard a quote today, or I saw a quote today on social media where a guy was talking about family legacy, and I'm really huge on that. I talk about that all the time as like a benefit to a pure lifestyle. And what he said was that we need to be more intentional, especially in the African American community, to really value the institution of marriage, to see it as a benefit, to really commit to one woman, to commit to one man, and to be able to work through conflict and communication in a way that creates a healthy environment for our children and for our families. And the interesting thing was, he wasn't talking about that just to be talking about it. He said that that was the answer to financial stability in the Black community, which I thought was even more insightful, because you are essentially combining households, you are combining talents, gifts, support for children in those households, and we've been plagued a long time by fatherlessness and things like that. And when we talk about sex, we have to understand that even though it's a beautiful and wonderful experience that God gave us to have with our husband or wife, that when we do that outside of that context, when we do that outside of that barrier and that protection, there are so many struggles that arise from that. It doesn't mean that we all are going to be perfect. There's going to be things that happen. There's blended families, which are beautiful, right? But at the same time, we need to strive for the goal of what we want to have, right? And not just settle for whatever is handed or whatever it is that we feel like we can access. We want to just do better at striving forward. So I want to encourage all of you guys watching this, who will watch this later, to be sure to get this book. I had a little trouble putting the link in there, but if you just search the ABCs of Purity on Amazon, it will pop. It'll be the first book there. You'll see Janetta's beautiful son on the cover. It really changed how even the degree in which I thought about purity by reading this book, because I'm not a parent yet. But when I read the book, I thought to myself, wow, like this is so important, because and my mom, she did a really good job of kind of like teaching us the things that we should know. But if I raise my children in the way in which I feel like those are the things that I needed, and sexually, the understanding that I need. I'm a big understanding person. I need you to kind of explain certain things to me. And I'm really good at like taking it in once you can break it down. Then I would have not spent several years of my life in such confusion. And so this book was very meaningful to me, and just really helped me even in my coaching and some different things to really have even a deeper understanding of how important it is that our innocence is safeguarded. Everybody as an adult is talking about vulnerability. They're talking about safe spaces. They're talking about peace. I just want peace. I want a safe place. People are toxic. And we need to create that same environment for our children, right? So that when they get to be an adult, they're not like deprived of this peace that we're talking about.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people are searching for. A lot of adults, I can tell you, are searching for identity. They're searching for peace. They're searching for inner healing, and all of these things really that weren't established when they were children, and they really are trying to make sense of their childhood and how it affected them.
Yes.
And they're trying to understand what a healthy relationship looks like when they never have experienced or seen one in their own home. And a lot of singles, I commend you, because even though you're single, like, the things that you're doing right now or preparing are laying the foundation for your children. Like, what you do today is laying the foundation for your children and your husband. So it's a journey. It doesn't just start, everything's going to be right when I say I do. Like, it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey of preparation and just living for God. That's what it is.
Yes, yes. And we believe that that is the only way to this abundant life that you want to have. Okay. So accept the Lord, accept Jesus. I love it. Thank you so much, Janetta. Brenda says, I hope this talk is being recorded, Canden. Thanks for sharing. Yes, it is, you guys. So you can always just take the link and share it later with someone. Encourage them to view it. And we'll try to have more talks as we go about the subjects that really matter to you. So this is your final call. If you have a last question for author Johnetta Howard, please throw it in the chat. She's given us some good insight on especially where to start and then how to maintain our interaction with our children so that we can set them up for success, right? Just by being honest, open with them was one of her points. Just to review by asking them questions about what they're experiencing in their world, and then by teaching them, okay, this is mom, this is dad, this is what gender means, this is what it means for you to be a boy, this is what it means for you to be a girl, this is how you conduct yourself, and teaching them to be loving, as she said, and sensitive to people while honoring their convictions in their relationship with God, right? The Bible says to train up a child in the way they should go. And there's a reason why the Bible says that, because children are not able to train themselves. They're not able to give themselves the instruction that they need. That's why the Lord created parents. And that's why he's our heavenly Father. Hello, major key. So I thank you so much, Janetta. You're excellent. And I am just very encouraged by the work that you do. Continue on. Is there any final thought that you have? You gave us a lot already, so.
Well, I thank you. It's just an honor to be here with you. And you're just doing amazing things. The only thought that I would like to leave people with is just don't feel like you are defeated in this area. Don't feel like you've messed up or you've gone too far. Don't feel like it's too late for you or your children or your family. And don't feel like you don't, just because you don't have the perfect family, which doesn't exist, that, this is impossible for you. And I would just say, wherever you are, God will meet you wherever you are, whatever your family looks like, whatever your children or your life looks like, or your relationship looks like right now. If you just make a decision that says, God, I just want to live for you, he will help you. You don't have to do this on your own. Matter of fact, it's impossible to live this life of purity on your own. And I just wanted to encourage you not to compare yourself with anyone else. And just really lean on God to lead you. And if you find yourself in a cloud of lust, if you find yourself in addiction to pornography, or whatever way you're living right now, just know that you don't have to continue that way, that there's peace, there's hope, and there's authentic sexuality and love within Jesus.
Yes, I love it. You guys, if you want to keep up with Johnetta Howard, you can visit her on Instagram at her full name, Johnetta Howard. And you can also go to Amazon and grab her book. I don't think that's the best way to reach you, right? If they DM you on Instagram, that would be good. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, you can give her a shout out. You can tell her you like the talk, or you can ask her any questions that you have. And if she ain't studying, she'll get back to you. But she's trying to get her business together so she can mentor, some of us when we get our families and whatnot. So thank you so much for joining us. I know a lot of you guys said hello in the comments, so I'm sorry if I didn't get to shout you out. I got really carried away with the subject matter. I'm very excited about this. So thank you guys all for being here and for your insightful questions and your comments. And we're going to bid you adieu until next time. Thank you so much, Janetta, for being here. And I'll see you guys in the next Live with Candid. Yay!